Okay, we're live. Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Scholar Gypsies. New school year, new round of interviews with interesting people from Ireland and maybe even one or two from outside Ireland over the next couple of months. Today, I'm delighted to have Christian Morris. Many of you will be familiar with Christian's work on Christian Morris TV on Odyssey. There'll be links to his channel in the description of this video, but also I'll be putting it out on my Substack as well. I was really wanted to get Christian on here today. He's one of the kind of bright but also funny. I can't stand people that don't have a sense of humor when talking about tyranny of the times. Um, I really wanted him to come on to talk a little bit today about where he sees, the most worrisome things in our future ahead, like very near term future ahead, but also some of the some of the things that have been going on in the recent past, the hate speech legislation. We can rhyme it off, transgender stuff, massive immigration, whatever direction he wants to take it. So,
Okay,
Christian,
well,
welcome and come
okay.
on in.
Thank you. I'll cut through you. Sorry, I was as impatient as ever because I'm one of the most impatient people you'll ever come across. But I'll start by saying we've already won. And one of the problems that many people are still encountering on our scene, if you like, the genuine alternative scene, is that they suffer from something that I've used the term wirra wirra, which is an old Irish expression, oh wirra wirra, as in wirra, mother of God. Oh where sure isn't it terrible, and isn't it nothing sure that we can do, whereas in fact we've already won. It's today is now Tuesday the 12th of September 2023. I don't know if anybody saw a video from that show, whatever it's called, the Frontline, or the what's the latest chat show on RTE called,
Oh,
Upfront,
I
or
don't know. I saw the clip. If you're talking about
yeah.
are you talking about the woman that kind of spoke out last night?
Yeah, the woman that basically went in there. It's entirely fitting that it was on September the 11th that she did this kind of surprise attack on RTE, and it was fabulous what she did, and that would have hit all the normies who watch RTE. And what this woman said was essentially what we have said, not in so many words. She said that RTE has an abusive psychological relationship with the Irish people. One of my analyses on my channel is that the psychologically abusive relationship that that RTE has manifests itself through forcing people to pay a tithe, TITHE, that medieval concept of the tithe being the license fee. And this woman opened up by saying, I'm not paying my license fee anymore because, and not in so many words, what she meant was, you are emotionally abusing the Irish people. And the presenter said, but Leo's alleged and RTE is great and Ryan Tubridy this. No, she said, RTE is emotionally abusing the Irish people. It's now because I'd say 20,000 people have seen it online so far. Andy Heasman has downloaded his own copy of it. I've downloaded my own copy of it. Thomas Sheridan put it out on his Facebook, so all the world saw it. Because I would say that on the alt scene here in Ireland, Thomas Sheridan has the most reach, both within Ireland, but also he's got a big following in England, in Britain, in North America, and in the other English-speaking countries. Thomas is a big player on the Irish alt scene. It's so typically Irish alt scene that one of the biggest players does all his stuff from his car in Sligo. But hey, that's the way we do it here, Thomas Sheridan, on many occasions in 2020, I fell off the bed laughing at his impressions, particularly of Glenn Hansard, and then, of course, they also have John Waters. So there's a lot of big guns out there. And what we're seeing now really is, to borrow John Waters' analogy, John talks about filling up a sports stadium with an eyedropper, whereby if you have an eyedropper, you put one drop and then the next drop is twice, and then the next drop is twice the previous. And you will have the sports stadium filled in 55 minutes. And what John is referring to really is the power of momentum. And this is what we're now seeing, particularly in what we saw last night. What we saw last night on what they have these different corny names, the Upfront or Front Up, or the Front Line, or the Line in Front. RTE pick up these absolutely ridiculous names for these bloody awful programs. I remember being in the studio audience for Claire Byrne Live in 2018, and it was just atrocious. It was appalling, Claire Byrne Live. Absolutely appalling. It's not questions and answers with John Bowman. Now, of course, from 2016 until about 3 weeks ago, the head of RTE was a woman of big glasses. So, if you want to be the head of if you want to work in broadcasting in Ireland and you're a woman, all you need is big glasses. Talent, no. Education, no. Ability, no. Original thinking, no. But you've got to get those big glasses. So for a period between 2016 thereabouts, I think, I don't know when the woman with big glasses started, but she kind of crashed and burned kind of around July. And RTE was, I think, at its probably arguably its lowest point under the woman with big glasses. There was no originality. There was complete slavish recitation of the government narrative at all times, and there was complete protection of Varadkar. And this is something that a great tweet guy, The Last True Gael, talks about. He talks about how RTE unfailingly and unflinchingly protects Varadkar all the time. Now, it remains to be seen if that's going to be the case, because, you know, the defenestration of Ryan Tubridy that happened about 3 weeks ago, that's seismic. So we're witnessing now what John Waters has referred to, the growing momentum. So this is a terrific time to be alive. This is a blessed time to be alive. And people are still, you still get the odd person going, oh, where, sure, isn't it terrible? Sure. Oh, well, look, unless they start a nuclear war tomorrow in Ukraine, I think we're fairly well okay, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. No, you brought up a number of things there. I do agree with you in that sense that it's an exciting, a wonderful time to be alive. And the other, I suppose, one of the points is the fissures, if you like, or the little mini explosions. You see it with the Ryan Tubridy. You even see it with the Wolf Tones concert, the reactions.
Yeah.
That to me is speaking to, there's an underlying wave of emotion there of unspoken of in the media. Like the most hilarious reaction to the Wolf Tones, will say, I don't, in Electric Picnic to me was every major media figure was out on people on our side, like we'll say, like David Quinn, who writes and who occasionally might say
sorry,
something.
Just a second. Stop. David Quinn is not on our side.
Well, this is the thing. But the reaction of the reaction of those people to that was to purposefully not recognize what's going on, because I can't say, as much as I'd like to say, oh, these people are all X, Y, or Z, they must in some sense understand what's going on. Or what do you think?
No, I think that they believe their own bullshit. Can I use bad language? Am I okay with using bad language?
Absolutely, go for it.
Great, Grant. Because great. You might have heard up to this moment now. I was trying to kind of button it.
You've been doing well.
Yeah, I know, and I mean, I buttoned it there. There's somewhere else that I'll button it as well, I'm sure, but we don't need to go there. But yeah, what were we saying? We were talking about what? Jog my memory.
There's a wave of, there's an undercurrent of emotion in the country, and you can see how the people react to Ryan Tubridy. Let's go back to Ryan Tubridy. That was as in the topic they're writing about, but the broader sense to me is the people of Ireland are not happy with RT, and that came out last night when that
RT. I've said it on my own channel there. Please subscribe, folks. See there, I'm on Odyssey, where we won't have the bug men censoring me. Come and join me on Odyssey, folks. But I have said that RTE has become the news story. RTE has become the story in itself now. Well, then they're fucked. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
If RTE is the news story, then they're fucked. They've lost the dressing room. Now, it could be argued, in addition, that they lost the dressing room a long time ago, and I think among a certain quorum of the population they did. They lost the dressing room with me in 2019 when I saw that they were telling lies to protect Varadkar regarding his smearing of the Waterford whistleblowers, who are specialist doctors in Waterford University Hospital, who were whistleblowing on malpractice in the mortuary. And Varadkar said there's no evidence to support it. And they said the evidence is what we all witnessed. And you see, this is what they'll say in court. The evidence is what you've witnessed. And then Varadkar said, oh, no, that's not what I really said. Oh, that is what you really said. Yes, that is what you really said. So then, he said, well, I'm sorry if it seemed, which is the classic psychopath's gaslight. I'm sorry if it seemed. In other words, he's saying you're wrong and I'm forgiving you for being wrong. And RTE said, Eileen Dunn. And I won't even repeat in this channel the stuff I've said about Eileen Dunn. I won't, but Eileen Dunn said that Taoiseach has made a full and unconditional apology, and he hadn't. It was a lie. But what RTE was doing there was the old trick of diverting people away and saying, no story here, nothing to say. And Unfortunately for RTE now, the Ryan Tubridy thing and all of the other things around other people in RTE who've been on a gravy train as well. And of course, the lady with big glasses, Dee Forbes, there I'll say it, that has now blown up in their faces completely. So they've become the story. We're all saying, well, weren't we telling you so? And now the normies out there, that kind of in Kuwait mass out there who aren't listening necessarily to us, who would still buy the Irish Times or the Independent, and who would still follow RTE Radio or RTE TV. What happened last night, for example, was a real smash and grab raid done by a very elegant, nicely spoken, credible Irish woman. I mean, there's a type of Irish femininity with that woman. Only a woman, a real woman, not a pretend woman, only a real woman could have delivered that. And we all relate to that type of woman who's just really had enough of their guff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, but what does the normie in these sense? I'll let you but you trigger something. I want to say it before I forget it. We're in a scene now where the normies, as you put it, are kind of don't know where to go to get information. So is that a dangerous situation, a good situation, or what situation is it?
It's none of those things. It's a natural process. And the idea that Rome was built in a day is another trap that people can fall into. So in other words, they might get a good tweet out, or they might get that video of the woman out like last night. They think that's going to do it all. It's not. If you look at the Romanian Revolution in 1989, there was a growing dissent movement in Romania for 7 or 8 years before then. And Romania was a profoundly repressive police state. I mean, a really brutal, more than East Germany or even Czechoslovakia. Communist Romania was a horrible, horrible place. And it was a very dangerous place to be not in the system, Communist Romania, a very dangerous place indeed. But there was a growing dissent movement in Communist Romania, which eventually culminated in Christmas 1989 of the Ceausescu's being executed. Here's an interesting little anecdote. Till the moment they hit the deck, Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu were completely unapologetic and completely defiant. And the men who executed them, at least one of them committed suicide in the interceding years because they were very traumatized by what they encountered in the final hour, really, of the Ceausescu's lives. And I can understand that. They were utterly unrepentant, utterly unapologetic, and they were shouting abuse when they were brought in. They were filthy dirty, they stank, but they were utterly defiant. And I believe that had they been groveling or had they been crying or all that kind of thing, that they would have shot them with contempt. But what they did was they left those men who shot them, which was the right thing, actually. I do believe that they deserve to be executed, but it left them terribly traumatized afterwards. This gets on to Roisin Murphy. Roisin Murphy made a perfectly legitimate remark about the trans cult. And then, of course, all the troons descended on her, and then she apologized and she said, I'm not going to participate in the conversation anymore. And one of the things I said on my platform was, honey, you're now in the same carriage as J.K. Rowling and Graham Linehan, whether you like it or not. You've jumped off the cliff. You cannot unjump. And Roisin Murphy has made the mistake of apologizing to a cult and to a particularly nihilistic and dangerous death cult, where my attitude to the transgender cult is stretch it, bend it, double it, and send it. You know, and this is why the troons never come near me. They hate me. The troons won't come near me because they know I'll give it back to them 1,000 times as good as they give it to me. And that you cannot pretend that a man is a woman or a woman is a man, no matter how much damage you do to your genitals. That's not going to turn you into a woman. Sorry, bro, you're just mentally ill. And that's what I'll say to them. And Roisin Murphy made that mistake of saying, oh, well, I apologize and I'm going to pull out the conversation. Chicken, you're in it now. You know, come and join the party with J.K. Rowling and Posey Parker. Oh, Posey Parker, by the way, her name is Kelly J. Keane, and she's a very outspoken lady, Posey Parker. She's, you know, I'd love to actually get her on my channel. But yeah. She is going to be doing a talk in Dublin at the weekend. And of course, all the troons and the NGOs, Gay Community News, Lakayla D&D, they're all descending on that to harass her. And more people now on Twitter are saying, hold on, our taxes are paying these groups that are bullying women and that are trying to suppress free speech. So there's a growing anger, but also a growing consciousness of what is really going on, and how we have, for example, in Ireland, we have this disgraceful NGO racket. It is an industry. It's a racket which is, following the globalist woke agenda, and in particular is setting out to suppress free speech and to suppress the notion of what a woman is. I'm very taken by that woman on RTE last night. I think that's a big one. That has really got under my skin. And I think that is really the first one, or among the first signs we're seeing of sane adults breaking through. One of the things John Waters says, both in his Substack, which is excellent, John Waters Unchained, and he says in videos, is, where are the adults? Well, that's what we saw on RTE last night. An adult stood up and spoke. That was an adult. We heard that woman on RTE last night was not a girl, it was a woman. She was a woman. Not a birthing person or these things that the troons use. That was a woman in all of her full splendor, her feminine splendor, showing us the sensibility of a woman, saying, no, this, you're bad people. You're bad people. You've emotionally abused the Irish, and now we're calling you out on this. And she was polite and she was dignified. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't lose her calm. This is why she was so devastating. It really made a huge impact on me, that video. That is woman that we saw there. And no amount of NGOs, no amount of filth and propaganda from cultural Marxists will ever silence a woman like that.
Well, all I'd add to that is, when and John, and I agree with you, on John's Substack too, where the adults, I think a lot of the normal society, if we want to put it that way, assumed the institutions of our state, our politics, our media had at least a percentage of adults in there doing adult things. I think, and to tie into your Ceausescu analogy there, or to make an analogy there, is what you might say in that situation is the regime were so disconnected at the end from what the reality on the ground is, that it hit them like a nuclear explosion at the end. And I kind of see that with our own elites, I call them, is that they're so disconnected to what's on the ground that that's the shock is going to be to them, not to maybe people like us.
One of the things that I've said is they genuinely believe their own bullshit. And they really do. There's an example of that as a guy on Twitter called Padraig Rice. And Padraig Rice is, he's a typical, I think he may be a lecturer in some university. I think he's finished a law degree or that. But he's never out of the Oireachtas. And he's never, until recently, he's never been off kind of mainstream radio talking about how oppressed gay, LGBTQ, XYZ, ABC people are. And then it got a bit wronger for Rice when he first of all started gloating about how the hate speech laws had passed the Dáil, and he just wrote, next up the Seanad, with this face on him. And then he was talking about pride in Cork, and people were questioning him about the books that are being passed off as suitable for children. Let's talk for a second about a crowd of real magicians, the Shannon Voyage. Have you seen those guys, the Shannon Voyage?
Well, I'm not as big a fan of the Shannon Voyage as you are, but go on.
Oh, do tell. Come on, let's hear. Come on, dish it.
No, let's hear what you have to say first.
All right. You may be not as big a fan of them, but this is getting back to the Enoch Burke chaos theory thing.
Yeah, well, I like that theory.
You like that theory?
Yeah, I've heard you expound on this, and I'm on your wavelength about. I like the you describe it as magic, and that chaos theory it's kind of semi-organized chaos, if you like, in the Burke head. Like, they aren't these complete loopers that they're portrayed to be. They're highly intelligent people. Like they're like huge, anyway, I won't ramble on. You keep going there.
All right, let's draw a comparison and a similarity between Enoch Burke and his family and the guys in the Shannon Voyage and me. None of us is perfect. None of us is necessarily going to appeal to everybody all the time. None of us is going to do the right thing all of the time. But if you accept that there is a broader spectrum of chaos, which would be comparable to throwing a rock through a windscreen, well, then the Shannon Voyage lads threw a rock through a windscreen, and the Burkes did as well. And that is measured with our equivalent of Trump derangement syndrome. Because a crowd of shrikes stood for 4 fucking days in Carrick and Shannon waiting for these fucking idiots to come up the river in a fucking boat that was leaking. You know, the only funny thing that somebody said on woke Twitter was the Twatanic. They said it's the Twatanic, it's going to sink. And I was looking at the lads on the Shannon going, oh, guys, please don't sink. Please. The boat was the biggest fucking death trap that they went up the show. Oh, should have, well, yeah, oh, no, and they were. And at the meantime, all of the groomers are up there in Carrick and Shannon for 4 fucking days waiting for these 5 lulas to come up the river. Now, that is called living rent-free in someone's head.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Hang on. You did it, guys. You had all of the fucking, all of the woke groomers up in Carrick and Shannon. Did you see the reception party they got in the end? Quite aside from No, Don't Ride Me and Crudbag and all of them. Those are my nicknames. No, Don't Ride Me and Crudbag.
And I know I've had bumped into those lunatics a few times.
I mean, you know, then Thomas Sheridan, I mean, it's Thomas who deserves a big shout out for getting me to think in the terms of magic and paganism.
Yeah.
So those guys, what the woman did on RTE last night, that was white magic. In Artane last Friday, a group of people went in and secretly videoed themselves breaking up a meeting from a group who were ostensibly encouraging elderly people to subdivide their houses into flats. I haven't looked at the terms and conditions of that, so I won't. I'll be careful from the point of view of defamation. But my first question is, what's the catch? And I don't know the answer to that. So they performed an act. I will say this. Schemes like Fair Deal, which are also targeting the elderly in relation. You're shaking your head.
No, I agree with you. I'm shaking my head. I don't think fair. I'm against. Like, it's not a fair deal.
No, it's not. It's typical what David Icke calls inversion deception. It's neither fair nor is it a fucking deal, you know. And with regarding Fair Deal, I can authoritatively say there's a predatory quality to it. With Fair Deal, I'll stand over that.
Well, absolutely. In the rural sense, Christian, here as well, because what you find with that, you know, you don't just have property, you have land in your possession. And one of the problems I have with it is it's like it's kind of taking private property into public ownership.
That's right. It's confiscation. It's confiscation. Yeah. And let's say that you have an elderly loved one and that elderly loved one needs to be either nursed in a nursing home or you need to make an arrangement to have him or her at home in some way, form, shape, or size. You need a number of things and you have a number of constitutional rights. You have a constitutional right to make the best decision. And you have a constitutional right to get the best value for money that you can. And you have a constitutional right to be given sufficient time in which to think of that. And the way that Fair Deal operates in practice is that the HSE will say, well, you have an old person there. We've decided he's going to stay in the home. You're not going to get any involvement in this, except that you're going to sign over your home for us. And if you don't, we'll get him or her made a ward of court and we'll get some kind of judge to just rubber stamp it. And that appears to be the way the HSE perceives it. Whether or not the courts do that, I won't say. I really can't comment in that regard. But at the same time, the whole notion of people being allowed to actually... Part of the feature of ownership is that you shouldn't be bullied out of your property. And that you shouldn't be bullied by anybody like the HSE who are out of control. I'll say that quite openly. The HSE is a monstrous organisation that is completely out of control. But if you own a property, then you have the right to a sufficient amount of time in which to consider how you might get the equity out of that property to pay for a loved one in a nursing home. Fair Deal, and I will say this legitimately, Fair Deal is one option. But let's say you own a 100-acre farm in County Roscommon and you have a loved one who needs to go into a nursing home. You can get equity out of that through a private arrangement with the bank or a building society, or some other person who can give you capital and then, you know, they claim it back. Fair Deal is not the only option open to people. And one of the things that the HSC tries to portray it is, and I will stand over this, the HSC insinuates that fair deal is the only option available to people. And they will bully people. I mean, they will instruct their solicitors to bully people to claim that the only option open to them is fair deal. And then they'll take you straight to court and they'll do their best to impose fair deal upon a family. So, and I'm only speaking hypothetically there, of course. I'm not referring, of course, to any specific instance. But there is this very predatory quality to fair deal. And I'll stand over everything I've said there. But I don't know if this Ava housing thing is similar and they deserve the benefit of the doubt. But certainly, if they're following in the line of fair deal, then it's predatory.
But one of the things you would say about the Ava housing thing is, regardless of whether it's good or bad, it's very good that people are in there questioning it at the ground floor.
100%. You, in a free society, you have the right to ask questions. Helen McEntee wants to stop that. Pascal Donoghue, that monster, that creep Donoghue, wants to stop that. They want to suppress free speech. They want people to be frightened out of asking questions because they are bullies. McEntee and any TD who supported the hate, or that Green Party woman who said, in order to protect the feelings of transgender people, we have to curtail people's constitutional rights. These things have no place. I'm getting angry, actually, and I shouldn't be, because that's the wirra thing, really. But these monsters, they're not human, don't have any place in a civilized society. It is our job to stand up and say to them, step off the bench now, get off the platform, and if you don't get off the platform, we're going to take over the platform. We have the NGO law. I mean, Donoghue, that article, Donoghue said, Irish taxpayers are happy to pay their taxes to support the NGO lobby to encourage healthy debate. I mean, go away, Donoghue. Go back to your hard drive, Donoghue, and your story time. Like Donoghue in his capacity as finance minister was celebrating drag story time in Westport. Go off and do what you have to do.
Yeah. Well, I can't give him. I remember going back to the very beginning of the pandemic. His major contribution to the country was to send a long message to Conor McGregor to help him.
Donoghue is rubbish. Donoghue is a piece of human waste. I get angry over Donoghue because one of the things about Donoghue is there's a nasty streak in Donoghue. There's that nasty liar's grimace smirk off him. And again, it's like Varadkar, the total free pass from the mainstream media. Donoghue, though, has an aggressive side to him. There's a nasty, sadistic streak in Donoghue. Varadkar is too, and Simon Harris, are too below par. Those men are not fully cognizant. Where Donoghue would be kind of less primitive in that regard than Varadkar and Simon Harris, but and in that regard, there's a nasty that you have a feeling Donoghue would go after you. Well, come on, Pascal, And I just broke the rule there of calling a politician by their first name. I broke my own.
You broke the Thomas Sheridan rule.
I broke the Thomas Sheridan rule. But come on, Pascal. There, I've made up for it by imitating his voice.
One thing, one take I want to get you, because Varadkar is a recurrent feature here in this conversation, and I want to get your thoughts on it. I've watched him for a long time, and just on the whole LGBT stuff, it seemed to me, going back for 15, 20 years, he's been in politics a long time, but his own closeting of himself as a gay man was, how do I put this? He didn't really embrace his own sexuality until he knew there was a major political plus to doing so. Is my take on him, and I'm just wondering, because the reason I bring this up is because in the late 90s, I worked in Dublin, but I was going out with someone who had a friend whose first cousin was gay, and he was up from the country, as you might say, first job. His parents didn't know, and he used to come around to us to be himself, if you like, and we used to go out with him quite a bit because he didn't know this, didn't know anybody, and wanted to kind of go to a few the George and a few other places. And I often think of that guy is that he would have benefited from someone like Leo Varadkar coming out and saying, "Look, I'm gay. I'm proud to be gay." All of this stuff, and to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong about this. Leo Varadkar was very cat and mouse about his sexuality until his early 30s.
Until his early, which
Until his early 30s.
I don't know.
But
Yeah,
I was
I
just
would.
wondering what your take on that side of him is.
I think Varadkar is just completely cynically exploiting the woke biscuit there. I don't think any self-respecting gay man would piss on Varadkar if he was on fire, and the idea that gives him kind of, well, RTE and all of the Montrose, they'd all give him woke points for that. But sure, that's the woke messiah shit that goes on at the Irish Times, particularly. John Waters put it beautifully. The Irish Times is Varadkar's personal fanzine, and RTE is his vanguard. Yeah. No, I mean, it's just a cynical maneuver. It's of no significance. Varadkar's no friend to gay men. The George is not a gay men's venue anyway. The George is a woke venue. It's an LGBT venue. The George, it's a
Okay.
rainbow flag venue. The George. The George is not a venue that gay men can meet other gay men in. And this is again, I get approached by gay men quite privately, not necessarily to hit on me, because I'm nearly 50 now. But a lot of gay men in their 20s even will say to me, there's nowhere where we can go to meet other men to hit on them and to have sex, to go off somewhere and have sex, a safe environment that's not online. Because, the online thing is bullshit, really. You want to meet somebody before you actually say, yeah, I want to have sex with you, whether it's a man or a woman, whatever. To be able to go to a bar, or usually it's bars that you hit on people and say, yeah, I'm interested. And the George certainly is not that environment, and they can pursue me over that if they want to. I can tell you the George is not that environment because it's full of troons. And just as much as Posey Parker and the Countess and so many of those are saying, and are very legitimately saying, that they want to protect the notion of what is a woman, I want to protect the notion of what is a man. And I don't want some mentally ill woman who has suddenly decided she's a man and she's a gay man coming into our spaces and hitting on us. That's catfishing. And, go away. If you want to be true and transgender, you go for it. I'm not telling people they can't do that. I'm saying, though, that your rights end where mine begin. And the right to falsify a public record, your birth certificate, that's wrong. That's 1984. That's a police state. That's a dystopia. The notion that you can retrospectively feck around with your birth cert and that. If you were born a boy, you were born a boy. Like Lydia Foy. Lydia Foy was born a boy. That's a rhyme. That's a rhyme. Lydia Foy was born a boy, but you were born a boy, and you may now decide that you're deciding in your head you identify as a woman. I can't change that. I can't get inside your head, but you're not going to. It's what 1984 says. Who controls the past controls the present. Well, okay, we're going to control the past. We're going to control the past. You aren't, and particularly mentally ill people are not going to control the past. This country, the Republic of Ireland, has excelled itself in the past year. And then you look back at it and you say, well, this was really coming anyway. Because, for example, Enoch Burke first went to prison in 2022, and the Countess first got out on Liveline with Joe Duffy for 3 days on 2022. So there was John Waters and Gemma O'Doherty brought their court case in 2020. So there has always been a dissident movement here. But the momentum, to return to John Waters' analogy of the momentum of the sports stadium, we began to see that for the first time this year with protests in places like Ballymun, Fermoy, East Wall, Ballybrack, that kind of thing. And one of the changes that happened this year was that when the establishment, to use that broad term, started their usual tricks, this was the first year that everybody's going, oh, no, get out of here. People for the first time were consistently seeing through them. One example of that was this lovely man going around with these brochures, East Wall here for all, and we all called it a pop-up NGO. I did not invent that term. Yeah, but whoever invented that term, kudos to this brilliant term.
I like that.
A pop-up NGO. And, it was, and it had all of those kind of, then, we will open our minds and open our hearts. As I said, the voice that patronized a million, and They suddenly, that whole establishment suddenly turned into a comic turn. And when you're laughing at them, they're fucked. They're wrecked. When, I was a secondary school teacher for 11 years. And
Okay.
I remember getting an interview. I remember doing an interview for a substitution job. And the school said, well, how would you envisage yourself as a teacher? Well, I said, when I was in secondary school, I said, there was one teacher, and we knew when he'd come in, the class would get more riotous. I said, on one occasion, we pinned him up to the wall with the desks. On another occasion, we set off fireworks. I said, and then on another occasion, we broke windows. And I said, and it was great when that teacher would come up because, oh, great, brill, and we had his class for the first, in sixth year, in leaving cert year, we had his class for the first 2 periods on a Friday morning. And it was great because you could do your homework and you could smoke and you could eat food down the back of the room. And I said at this interview, I said, that man was the black hole, the antimatter of credibility in a school. I said, and that is the last fucking type of teacher I would ever want to be. And I got the job. Because they said I think they probably said this person understands how you win and lose the dressing room in a secondary school.
Yeah.
And it is the same thing. This was the year really in which the Irish establishment, idiots like Peter McVerry and McEntee and all of these, they lost the dressing room. And once you've lost the dressing room, you'll never get it back.
No.
RTE lost the dressing room this year then with Tubridy and all of that. So RTE, you must understand.
And you can make the argument McEntee's lost the dressing room, regardless of where you are with the guards. You can see the number of them quitting the force again this year. It's in the hundreds that are voluntarily retiring from the position. So I'd say she's lost that, along with the the commissioners lost the guards because they've obviously voted that they want to get rid of them. So.
Yeah, well, there's another issue when that poor man got attacked down in Store Street. About 5 or 6 weeks ago, a poor man was very seriously injured in Store Street, and McEntee's response the next day or so was a photo op down in Store Street, and you want to say, look, McEntee, this was not the time for that. You did not read the room, and I think that angered even a lot of people who would have been Leo's legend, but Leo's not okay. Leo's legend, but Helen really got it wrong this time. Poor Helen. Leo's legend though. And then another example of that was yesterday. Did you see the hoax leaflet given out around Darragh O'Brien's constituency in Malahide?
Yes, and of course,
brilliant.
and of course he promoted it himself then. But it was like the
fucking imbecile. I mean, the imbecility of these people is beyond the beyonds. Now, O'Brien did need to do something. He needed to say, I am not the author of this leaflet. It is a hoax. That would have been that he would have actually, in all our earnestness, needed to say that because he is the TD and he is the minister in that. And if he was not the author of that and not associated with it, then he does deserve, and it's quite proper for him to say that. But no, because that would not be a member of the Irish establishment to just leave it at that and to do it tastefully and discreetly. No. He then delivered a speech on the need to house the Ukrainians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, never, if you're an Irish politician, then you must never turn down the opportunity for pious imbecilities. So then he delivers this lecture about the Ukrainians on his Twitter, and it was like McEntee's photo op again.
Yeah, but he's an even, he's had previous form, that fella, because we got rid of him before. He fell on a sword with the rest of them 10 or 15 years ago, I think, if I'm not greatly mistaken. He got back. It wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility in my mind that someone somewhere gave a silent nod to that leaflet to be distributed for the very purpose of how he reacted to it. We all, if you tie this into that Supreme Court Justice, who came out with the bonkers quote last week, where she said, we need to balance the rights of people's right to freedom of speech and their right to not being misinformed. that leaflet is almost the perfect example. It's almost like, look at this. This is what we're talking about. People sending around, leaflets like this. This is why we need stuff like that.
Are you suggesting that
No,
the minister
I would never.
that he was in on it?
Well, I would say let's phrase it in a way that doesn't get me fucking sued. Um, it wouldn't be beyond the realms of my imagination to say that a group supportive of an NGO group, a pop-up NGO group supportive of stuff could do something like that. Because to be fair, and
Oh,
I,
I say
I
they wouldn't. I say they wouldn't for the simple reason that it's too imaginative. The NGOs, you must
mm,
remember that the NGOs are dullards, and that their brain is rotted by the needlecraft and rotted also by soy and by estrogen and all that. So that kind of original thought, and it was a very original thing that was given out. I'm fairly certain, and I won't say any more, but I'm fairly certain that that was the real deal and that O'Brien is not complicit in it. Regarding Ms.
okay.
Justice Marie Baker, who you referred to there, Ms. Justice Baker, I'm disappointed at what she said. I'm disappointed at that because my understanding of Marie Baker when she was a judge of the Court of Appeal and of the High Court was that she was a humane judge and that she was an intelligent judge, that she listened to people and that she put the individual over the state. So, you wonder how she has come to this point now where she's making remarks of such depraved nature. And it's perfectly acceptable. That's not defamatory for me to comment about her in that way. That's fair comment, you know. Um,
I would say, like, I go along on the lines of what you've just said about that Supreme Court judge. But I think it comes back to an elite that are captured by, whether you'd say it's um, social media, but more almost conditioned to think our government is run through social media, is the way I would describe it. Is the reaction, they pump out information, they react to information, and it's almost like they've been capped. That cycle of negativity or whatever it might be, it's almost like their minds are conditioned a certain way on certain topics. One of the things she did say in that piece, and I wrote about it, but I forgot to write about this bit. And at the very end, she goes, and we need to fall in line with international bodies. This idea that Irish solutions, because some international body is saying
mm,
some gunk, uh,
mm.
that's an automatic response that leads to an automatic response. Oh, we have to do that too. And what we know, what I would see is most of these international bodies are not doing anything creative or good for the people of this particular country.
Oh no, they're not.
Um,
No, they're not. And I think what Justice Baker came out with there, and I'll declare an interest. I've been in court in front of Justice Baker myself in my own litigation, and I found her good. So I would ask people not to take too seriously the kind of gravity of what she said. What I would take very seriously is the notion of politicizing the judiciary. That's exceptionally serious. That a Supreme Court judge is given a platform and it's considered appropriate for a Supreme Court judge to be commenting on anything other than a strict interpretation of the law or cases that she is privy to is wrong. We need to have a separation of powers in which judges are not politicizing and judges are not grandstanding on TV in that particular regard. That's exceptionally serious. And I think that's the point that people need to stay more focused on than the actual content of what Marie Baker may have said. I don't know how seriously she believes what she said there, but certainly it's not consistent with the judge.
well, what would you say there in the politicization of the judiciary is what we can see. I think when McEntee was out on maternity leave, when Harris was in justice, he announced the expansion, about 12 or 14 new judges that were coming on stream.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, they were overdue because the court, if you do go into the court process, especially at the district court level and that, it is there you're talking chaos. Um, but if you follow, I think the judiciary is now starting to get pumped in at the entry point with ideologues. So if you go back and have a look at the district court judges that have been appointed this year, they've come from very, we'll say, interesting places in their career, as opposed to some of the traditional types of practice that would be feeding, we'll say, the justice system.
I cannot comment about district court judges or their background. I've been in the district court a few times regarding kind of district court issues, and I've represented myself nearly always very successfully in front of, but that's a while ago, of course. That's kind of the last time I was in the district court was in 2015. And I was in front of a judge called Brian Smith, who's well known for being a good judge who listens, you know. The district court is a summary court. And, you know, there's a long history of kind of eccentric and colourful characters being district court judges who've come out with some really, really shit judgments, which you can then appeal to the circuit court or you can have a judicial review of in the High Court. So I appreciate that for a lot of people, their experience of the court system is primarily, if not exclusively, the district court, and that it can be a very hard experience. I remember being in the district court in Dublin around 2014 or 2015 in a case that I was ultimately acquitted in, where I represented myself. And, you know, it was packed with people, and it was the Bridewell in Dublin. And, you know, at one point, there was a woman just chatting away to an Irish woman chatting away to her friend. And the judge said, please remove her. And she told the judge to fuck off. And the copper then takes her out. She calls him a fat cunt. And yeah, fat cunt. And everybody in the court was laughing at it. And, you know, that's the district court. It's always been a fairly raw. I don't think anybody charged her then. They just got it the fuck out the door and left it at that, you know. That's the district court. My experience of district court judges who I've come across is 99% of the time they're good. I've come across some circuit court judges who are exceedingly sus in the circuit court, who are exceedingly sus. I don't know, though. I mean,
yeah. Let me ask you a question. Because you just trigger something there. What's your view? And you must have come across, you know, I call them I call the collective of us all as the resistance, and there's different fragrances within that resistance. Have you come across the common law people, the kind of,
yeah.
you know,
and
what's your views there?
I have 4 different views for the common law people. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's for the common law people. Can you hear this? Will I turn it up? That's for the common law people. Next question.
Okay. Well, I'll have to actually expound on that now, because that's
no, I don't need to. I don't need to. It's bollocks from start to finish. And we saw the most recent example of it was Strokestown, where those men got very severe sentences for it. And I read it out on this platform here. You know, initially when we heard the sentences they got in Strokestown, oh God, they were harsh sentences. Then we looked closer into it, and there were a number of issues there. First of all, the problem with Strokestown was that family fell down the common law hole. Once you fall down the common law hole, be prepared to end up in the gutter. You will end up with fuck all except a massive criminal record, huge debt, and not being allowed into the courts. I mean, what will happen is with the common law with those fuckheads, there are orders against allowing them even to bring cases now. So, you know, no. I've given my answer regarding the common law shitheads. I call them the freetards, the free men on the land, the freetards, you know, and I spotted them initially around Irish Water in 2014. And I just said, that stinks, you know. And then Direct Democracy Ireland was advising people to send their Irish Water initial packages back to Irish Water with no contract, no consent return to sender on them. Oh, fuck off. If you do that, what you're doing is you're admitting that you got it. You fucking imbeciles. Do not send them back. Tear them up, throw them in the fire, whatever. Wipe your ass with them. But do not send them back. And then I was looking a lot closer. And by kind of mid-2014, I was aware that the whole common law thing is just a cult. And it's a cult mainly based on people who are who have a literacy level of 3 to 4 years of age and kind of dribble. And when they're reading things, they go blah, 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 like that. You know, I mean, there's nothing redeeming to say about the common law people, and my emphasis on the word nothing. Now, I think I've said enough on that one. Next question.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. What was I going to say? I'm just curious to think what I'm not. The hate speech the Dáil is back on the 20th, and I see there's some protest organised around it for the 20th. What's your view? Do you think it's going to go through? I have a sense it's not going to go through.
No, I have a
People
sense it's
seem
not. I have a sense it's
Yeah.
not. The Shannon in the 11th hour and 59th minute and 59th second stood up and did what it had to do. And it did what the Shannon is supposed to do. It delayed it. So the Shannon does not constitutionally have a veto. So maybe it should have a veto. I don't know. But it doesn't have a veto. But the Shannon, by stopping the process of it going through smoothly, like our little friend Padraig Rice said, next up the Shannon. And just his little, that smug gimp face on him in Twitter got me very, very angry when I saw that. Because what he was really saying was, we got it as a rubber stamp through the Dáil. Now watch us rubber stamp it through the Shannon. Well, I'm sorry, Padraig Rice. It didn't go so easily for you, did it, Rice? It didn't happen quite the way that you imagined it would. So then Elon Musk gets involved. Then Trump Jr. gets involved. Then Simon Harris says, oh, well, they're the right kind of enemy. And people said, no, hold on. A lot of people objected to that, including me. I put in an objection to the public consultation. And what McEntee and all of these ones, and Varadkar in particular, saying, fuck your public consultation, we're doing it anyway. Now, that's part of the pathology of Fine Gael anyway. They're pathological. Fine Gael are a particularly pathological group of people, much more than Fianna Fáil ever are. But the reality is, they were relying, the likes of Rice and all of those, were relying on a perception that this was going to happen without any dissent, was going to go through smoothly, and really there was nothing more to say. So in that regard, they're already fucked. Then Elon Musk has announced that he's going to take a constitutional challenge of that. And Varadkar, being the legal expert that he is, and RTE RTE just took their tongue out of his rectum for 5 seconds so he could speak. And he said, Elon Musk wouldn't have standing to bring this, and Elon Musk would have standing to bring this. If there is one Twitter user in the Republic of Ireland, then Musk is standing. So, but Varadkar's an imbecile, and he gets all of this free audience from RTE and the Irish Times, etc. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know.
No, but I think it's another example. There's a part of them, Harris, Varadkar, they're kind of delighted to get this tweet back from Elon Musk in the sense that it boosts it in some way boosts their ego. But hold on. But there's no, in a sense, that there's no consequence to what they're saying. They think there's no consequence to what they're saying. I fully believe Elon Musk will take a case against them. And
he will. He will. Yeah, he will. He will. They don't think that deeply. You're making the mistake of assuming that Varadkar, Harris, McEntee, all these ones, that they think that deeply. If you take Varadkar as an example, if Varadkar thinks to the next photo op, McEntee thinks to the next photo op, or the next person who says Leo's a ledge. That is the truth of Varadkar, and it's said in all earnestness and all substance. The only thing that Varadkar is worried about is the next person in RTE or the Examiner or the Journal who says Leo's a ledge. That's all that matters to him. The idea that Musk said this in a tweet, or Donald Trump Jr. said X, Y, Z, or somebody said something somewhere. Jordan Peterson or these kind of people said this. They don't think that deeply.
Okay, things are worse than I thought. So
no, I think things are what they are. They are what they are.
Listen, what question I was going to ask you there is politically what comes next then? If this is,
I don't know. I have no idea. I've no idea what's coming.
Because I have a sense the Dáil recess, things have got even worse for them on almost every topic, in that the country is, whatever's going on in this country over the summer, like take I can't see this government getting any referendum passed on any subject for the rest like on no matter good, bad, or indifferent, because that I think the people are going to definitely reject them on any type of referendum. I'm just curious as to it's a I can't get my head around it either. This is why I'm asking you. There's no obvious place to put all of this discontent politically, from what I can see.
I don't know what's going to happen. Only an arrogant person or a kind of a pub bore says, "Oh, here's what's going to happen." You know, because yesterday at this time, 24 hours ago, we didn't know that that woman would come onto the program on RTE last night and basically lay waste to them. You know, and we didn't know 6 months ago that all of that crap with Tubridy and all of these ones would explode. You know, so it's the unknown that is the really fascinating and interesting and fun thing. It's great fun. What we've been witnessing this year has been terrific fun. What was your question? Have I answered it?
Well, no, you're kind of in the same boat as me. You don't know you don't know what's like what I would let me reframe this again. That woman on RT follows on from 50,000 whatever thousand number of kids surrounded the wolf tones, follows on from Tubridy. There's these little volcanic explosions, if you want to put it that way, are happening at a much faster pace now, and that one of them is going to be a major explosion. And in the fallout of that House of Cards, we'll say, of Leo the Ledge, McEntee, you name it, Martin, all of them, that they will in some sense all have their legs blown off. And I suppose the curiosity is there anything that will come is there anything ready to take that anger or whatever it might be, emotion, and put it to use for something good?
There is. This is a very robust republic that we live in. It's one of the most robust republics in world history. Are you asking me, is it going to be okay? I'll give you the answer. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But is it going to be okay for Varadkar and McEntee and Donoghue? Well, I hope to fuck not.
Well, it definitely won't,
may it not be okay for them. But at the same time, is it going to be okay for those people like that lady on the news or on Upfront with so-and-so last night? Yeah, it'll be okay for them because they're, or Thomas Sheridan or you or John Waters or all of it. It'll be all right for us because natural law is in our favor and the natural order is in our favor. And just as long as we stay true to our hearts, then we'll be okay. Earlier on in this particular interview, I said Pascal where I should have said Donoghue, and I just feel I feel violated. I feel soiled by saying that, but at the same time, and Thomas Sheridan, he won't forgive me when he hears that now. I'm in for it now. To hear that. But it was a quick thing I said off the cuff there. But other than that, the natural order is in our favor there, and I what the likes of Donoghue and Varadkar and McEntee and all these ones, O'Gorman, they want people to be in despair. They want people to be demoralized. They want people to be unhappy. Micheál Martin, Thomas Sheridan said that, and John Waters said, there's a real feeling with Martin that he's trying to work out in his own kind of imbecilic way, because there isn't very much substance there at all. How can I make people's lives unhappier today? Where at least in Varadkar's case, it is, how can I get another photo shoot in Leo's Ledge? With Micheál Martin, Martin's an NPC. Varadkar's a psychopath. That's the difference. And, yeah, it'll be, they're not serious people. It's all right. They're fucking idiots, and it's like the school teacher who the kids blow farts in the classroom and they throw things around the room and they scream. It's all right. I'm glad I left teaching, by the way. I did it for 11 years. That was enough. You look at the state of schools now. You look at Enoch Burke with the shit he's put up with now. No, fuck that.
We might round out on that because we skip by the Enoch Burke magic stuff there earlier.
I think he's just such a fucking legend, Enoch Burke is. I think he should be the next president of Ireland, and he looks the right part for the next president of Ireland. and he's tall and he's striking looking and he's very articulate. And actually, if you meet him, I met him briefly in the courts on that day in March when, Simeon and all of them were fucked down the steps of the Court of Appeal. And it was great, actually. People are saying to me, oh, well, will you be there for the next appearance by the Burkes? But they're not the fucking traveling Wilburys. I don't know when the fuck they're going to be there next.
Yeah.
Will I be there?
Yeah.
I don't know. I only happened to be in the forecourts that day to do paperwork. And I said, the place was ringed by Gardaí and ringed by media. I said, I went up to a copper. I said, are the Burkes on today? He said, yeah. Brilliant. So that's how that was just coincidence that I happened to be there. Now, as Thomas Sheridan would say, synchronicity, fucking sure. But at the same time, I'm not the Burkes PR department. I do not speak on their behalf. I'm not their press officer. But let's talk about Enoch Burke, because one of the great things about Enoch Burke is that he does not give a flying fuck about what anybody thinks. And he really is impervious to it all. He is completely impervious to disapproval or to people condemning him or that. But I have a hunch that the school had a problem with him going back this time. I think what was happening on this occasion is that he went inside the premises and was sitting down inside the premises of that. And of course, all the kids would be going mad over that because they'd be wanting to come up and shake his hand and to say, hey, Enoch, and all of that. I remember from my own experience teaching, the teachers who were sincere, even if they were strict, or even if you didn't fully believe in what they were about, if you knew that they were sincere and that they would stand their ground, well, teenagers love that, because teenagers psychologically are craving certainty. Believe it or not, they're not craving cool people like Varadkar thinks. Varadkar wants to be popular. Enoch Burke wants to be right, and that's the distinction. It's a very fundamental distinction. And kids see that in Burke. They see the sincerity in Burke, and they flock to it. And it's part of Burke's. It's a profound part of Burke's charisma. That woman who was gloating initially on Twitter about getting Burke sent back to prison, I would draw the analogy. She electrocuted herself on the charge of Burke's charisma. That's an analogy. But she did. She electrocuted herself on the charge of Burke's charisma. And, Burke is back in prison now. He's got his Bible and his other books there. He's okay. He'll be fine with that. Don't imagine that that's going to damage him in any way. It's not. It's actually given him stratospheric charge now. His charisma, just when you thought Burke's charisma could not get any better, then that woman opened her mouth. She did an article in the Sunday Independent that I read out here on my platform.
Yeah, I listened to it, yeah.
Interviewed by Ali Bracken. And both of them now, in my opinion, are profane curs for what they did. They are profane curs. I say that seriously. And on their heads be it for what they have done there. And, they did that of their own free will. They were king for a day. And perhaps you could argue that they were fools. But what is done. And they let the school off the hook of having to deal with Burke, because the article in the Sunday Independent 2 weeks ago was such that the school said, oh, well, look, we're in this terrible position here, Judge, and we have to get Burke out of the school or that. Where what was actually happening, I suspect, and I may be wrong, but that prior to that the school genuinely was at a loss to know what to do. And that woman stepped in and she did it for the school. And what do you say? What have I also said on this platform many, many times? Never give a sucker an even break. Go for it. Knock yourself out, Pat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I drove down to the school last week to see if
I
I
could said that. Yeah.
catch it. And the scene down there, like the question, to me was just so serene. There's no sense of anything untoward going down there. Now, obviously, it was only one occasion at lunchtime, and I didn't get to see Burke, and I didn't catch him coming out either. But I did. The question in my head is, how did they let the situation develop that there must have been enough kind of communication to him to go into whatever corridor he was in and let him do what he.
I'll tell you where the situation developed. I'll tell you where it developed. It developed when the principal sent out, the previous principal, Niamh McShane or whatever her name is, sent out an email telling the staff that they had to address the student by they, them. So this principal sends out this email, not in so many words necessarily, but the effect of which, the proper construction of which is, you have to call this student they, them. You do not have an opt-out clause. We're not going to allow conscientious objection. She sent out that email, and now that's why we are where we are today.
I suppose, yeah, where like it is so unusual I suppose the other side of this, like I got it straight away last year when he went in, because I've had the Burkes would be on my radar just purely from living in the West here. They'd be a known entity, if you like. And I says, oh yeah, here's a guy that has the courage of his convictions. These people do not understand somebody. They think that, he's going to jump off these convictions, and
No,
he
he's not.
totally
He's not.
wasn't. And he
No, he's
won't.
not.
So it's
He
very,
won't.
like, I think this is very, very interesting situation now.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, really, I agree with you 100%. It's absolutely fascinating. And I had said on my platform, when it was the day that I actually read out the Ali Bracken article in the Sunday Independent, I said I got it wrong. I said the school is going to offer him his job back. But what Ali Bracken and Safayak did was they gave the school an excuse to get him off the fucking premises and into Nick. So I don't believe that the school would have brought that application. You see, they brought the contempt application then the week after the article in the paper, because it allowed the school to say, oh, look how embarrassing it is, and we're back in the newspapers again, and and in fairness to Judge Heslin, it like what happened to Burke was it went in first in front of a judge called Emily Egan, Ms. Justice Emily Egan, and then it was referred over to Mr. Justice Mark Heslin, and Justice Heslin more or less, I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing him here, but Heslin more or less said he is blatantly in contempt of court, and what is the person to do? How do you respond to blatant contempt of court where the person has made no indication of any attempt on his part or any intention on his part to back down? You have to put him in prison. And Judge Heslin, I think, has been rather unfairly misquoted. The judge's position was that all Enoch Burke has to do is make an undertaking not to return to the school. So I don't believe that the judge required Enoch Burke to say anything regarding his personal beliefs or to make any kind of profession or to profess anything other than to say, I'm not going to go back to the school. And that's not in fairness to the court, to ask a person not to go back to the school where they don't fucking want you back anyway, and where you've been sacked from the job, that's not a major ask. But then why do I support Enoch Burke? Because this is all coming from something that is profoundly insane anyway, that is profoundly deranged anyway. And it started with the principal, not even Niamh McShane, the principal, did not even have the pragmatic approach of saying to the staff, look, if you don't want to do it, nobody's going to force you. And I mean, I when I was a teacher myself, I taught, I never had a permanent job. I taught in school after school after school after school. And there were some principals who were great, and there were some principals who were okay, and there was the odd amount of principals who were fucking 9-shilling notes. And the ability of I think I probably would have made a good school principal. I wouldn't now. I wouldn't be able to tolerate the shite now. I wouldn't be able to be a school principal now. But what you do is, whether you're a teacher in class or whether you're a school principal, you have an instinct for when you are beginning to go out on a limb. And this is what McShane did by sending that email to the staff, effectively telling them that they had to use they, them in relation to this student. Well, Ms. McShane, where the fuck do you think it's going to end when you do shit like that? And again, it's that NPC thing of not getting beyond. They don't have an inner monologue or an inner dialogue, as I use the term inner dialogue. McEntee doesn't have it. Tubridy doesn't have it. Varadkar doesn't have it. They don't have an inner dialogue where they say, maybe somebody out there won't agree with me. Whereas the likes of Padraig Rice, for example, Padraig Rice is absolutely convinced. Roger O'Gorman is the same. If they say it at a press conference and it's quoted in the Irish Times and it's gone on RTE, then it's fact. And they genuinely, Micheál Martin's the same. They genuinely believe that it becomes fact once they've done that. And I would hazard a guess that the principal, Niamh McShane, was of the opinion, oh, look, I sent you this email saying X, Y, Z and ABC, and what's the problem? But Enoch Burke was not the principal of the school. And I taught in enough schools to know that the problems in a school, 99.99% of the problems percolate down from the principal. And if you have good leadership in a school, guess what? There's not going to be any fucking problems.
Mm-hmm. It's the same anyway. But I think that point you raised there is, the inner dialogue. You're talking about people that are surrounded by people who never disagree with them.
That's right.
That are never second guessing. Like, none of these advisors are employed to second guess your decisions, which in fact would be a use to you, like as in terms of a critical voice or just a devil's advocate on your thinking.
That's right. Do you know, actually, it's an anecdote really, but you'll hear it with people who say, well, I'm going to go and get legal advice. You're going to get fucking legal advice. Okay, go and get fucking legal advice. They'll tell you they'll charge you $5,000 to tell you that you're fucking wrong. You're going to get legal advice. You think getting legal advice is going to change the facts of the situation. And that's the lack of inner dialogue thing as well. An inability to say that there may be an opinion different from mine, and an inability to acknowledge that your position, my position, everybody's position is relatively subjective. So I may be wrong. I may be completely wrong with this. I think I'm not, for example, but I may be wrong. But no, McShane issued this diktat to the teachers saying, you have to use the term they then. Now, that's like the school would probably respond to me and say, oh, no, we didn't issue a diktat. Right. All right, school. Here's the question. If a teacher did not want to use that phraseology, what was the consequence for that teacher? If there was no consequence for that teacher, then it was not compulsory. If there was any consequence for that teacher, then it was compulsory.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen what's happened to the teacher.
Now here we are, and Enoch Burke is now presently playing his mouth organ in a cell in Mountjoy. So there's your answer. I hope he likes the porridge. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to enjoy the second stint a lot more than the first. Even
I would like the man to run for president. I mean, something that a lot of us have said now,
particularly. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I think the original piece I wrote on him was a combo job between him and his sister's another very interesting character. The one that's the lawyer that was.
Oh, she's something else, isn't she?
Employed by whatever the global legal firm was in Dublin. Arthur Cox. So, like they.
I'll interject for a second. I know a lot of people in Arthur Cox. I know a good few people in Arthur Cox, and they're top lawyers. Arthur Cox is a private commercial law firm, and they're actually a very good law firm. And the Arthur Cox people I've dealt with have always been, first of all, very honest lawyers, and secondly, very ethical people and nice people. Arthur Cox would be probably one of the top law firms in Ireland. And when you deal with lawyers, the very best lawyers, solicitors and senior counsel are always honest and decent and nice and likable and interesting people. So, the fact that she clashed with Arthur Cox, I will seriously not condemn Arthur Cox for that, but I won't condemn her either. I'll just say that's another episode on the telly, what happened with Amy Burke and Arthur Cox.
Well, they
good company.
Yeah, but the interesting, well, I won't go into her too much, but they get, it was another interesting tactic because again, in a sense, you could say she had won there because they paid her an ex gratia payment of 70 or 80 grand, and it was one of those where you'd say, right, they were worried about if this went to an employment tribunal of whatever description. They may have a case to answer, but again, she went down a path that led to lots of court appearances. But I suppose just the thing, the thing combining this, and maybe we can end on this, is the fact that the mainstream media's latest tactic now seems to be to, in some way, blame the mother as having kind of brainwash these kids through homeschooling, and in fact it's the mother is now becoming the
Yeah.
scapegoat because they have
Right.
no answer to the questions that the kids are raising.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what happens when you have communist, woke, left wing, paedophile totalitarians running the show here. And the problem that they have with Martina Burke is that Martina Burke exercised her constitutional right to educate her children at home. And this was before 2012, when that referendum was passed by RTE in the Irish Times, effectively allowing children to become the property of the state. Now, if I had heard myself having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have said, oh, God, Christians become an awful fucking tinfoil hat. But that is actually what happened. And John Waters was one of the very first people to speak out so courageously and as eloquently as he always does in relation to the 2012 children's referendum. But the Burkes are of the time before then. Martina Burke and her husband Sean had 10 kids. She educated them all at home. They are independent evangelical Christians. So Thomas Sheridan, that would perhaps fall into the parallel reality thing. And again, she had a parallel reality of educating them at home. They all went on, or nearly all of them went on to get degrees.
Not only that, every single one of them has got a first-class honours degree.
Well, I mean, there you have the issue with peer pressure in that household. There'd be a lot of peer pressure among them to excel. That's not bad peer pressure. That's what I would call positive peer pressure.
Yeah.
I would say this. I shook Martina Burke's hand. I shook her husband's hand. I shook Enoch's hand. And I think it was Isaac. By that stage, Simeon was already screaming in the guard van as they were taking him off Morgan Place. I didn't manage to get to Simeon in time. What I found when I met those 4 people was people who were very calm, polite, restrained, and articulate. So, the journal.ie and News Edge, all that, and RTE and all them, Micheál Martin, they would have us believe that these are a crowd of wackadoodles. They are anything but. And they are something that if you're a West of Ireland man, where are you from?
Tuam.
John Waters said this very well. He said, we all kind of knew these kind of people, and they were clever people and serious people and honest people. We all knew these kind of people. And the Burkes are a very familiar and old-fashioned traditional Irish archetype. And I say that exceptionally positively of them. A big family of serious religious people who, they'll never do you a bad turn. They'll never steal from you. They'll never cheat from you. They will never slander or lie about you, the Burkes,
Yeah.
And this is a sign, really, of how depraved and twisted our mainstream has become, where they are seen as the bad guys. But I know that I've spoken to nobody out there, particularly teachers, because I still hang around at teachers, of course, and all the teachers I've met completely support Enoch Burke. That's unanimously and unconditionally support Enoch Burke from the point of view of having a fucking idiot school principal saying, come here, you have to say X, Y, Z and ABC in the classroom. Oh, fuck off. Go fuck yourself. I remember when I was teaching, you'd have these imbecile principals who'd say, by the way, today is going to be our XYZ and ABC day in school. Oh, go and fuck yourself. Can I just get on with teaching the class, please?
Yeah. And sure, and in the year we've seen what's followed. It's not just a case of the teacher calling the pupil. Now the pupils are being encouraged to call at least one teacher they. And I can just imagine the chaos that erupts just from the grammatical problems of 7 and 8-year-olds having to address their teacher as they in all these kind of scenarios.
So will you wrap it there?
We shall wrap it there, Christian. Anything, maybe just give a plug to your channel there before we go. And I just want to thank you very much. It's been very enjoyable.
Look at the screen. That's where you can find me. I'm never able to get my finger to match the virtual reality there, but that's the screen. That's where you'll find my Odyssey channel. I'm completely unmonetized. I don't take money from anybody because you're taxed for that shit. So, I don't need the money. I'm not interested in the money. I only do this for the fun of it. And I think it's, I want to live in a free society. I'm interested in human rights and civil liberties. You want to help me, you get the subscriptions up on my Odyssey channel, please, boys and girls. That's the one there. Odyssey, Christian Morris TV. Share the videos, increase the subscriptions there, and so on and so forth. That's how you can help me.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks a million, Christian, and we'll just end the recording there. And we